What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. We are back, week 2 in the books, top 10 takeaways, and we're getting ready for week 3. But we got to go over week 2, talk about everything that has happened so far. We've now collected 2 weeks worth of data. And look, if anything has been taught for the first 2 weeks, it is not to freak out. We see this every single season with fantasy football. Tons of guys rise, tons of guys fall in the first 2 weeks, and a lot of guys come out of nowhere and end up doing nothing the rest of the season. Make sure while you're here, you like and subscribe to the show. We got a nice show ready here for you guys today. Let's kick off the first topic. It's going to be the injury reactions. And a lot of injuries in the NFL this week. Last week, not a ton, but week 2, there are a decent amount that are very impactful going forward. We're going to go over it here. JJ McCarthy out 2 to 4 weeks due to an ankle injury. It looks like Carson Wentz could be the guy that's going to be suiting up for the Vikings. They take on the Bengals this week, and the Bengals as well, missing Joe Burrow. That passing attack, though, has been solid even with Joe Burrow out. I'm not overly concerned about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I worry more about the touchdowns than I do the volume and the yardage for those players. But ultimately, I think the Bengals are going to be okay, at least the fantasy assets with Jake Browning. With the Vikings, it's hard to get any worse with JJ McCarthy being out. And so we will see how it affects. Jordan Addison is not back. TJ Hawkinson has been a disappointment. Justin Jefferson's been a little bit disappointing as well. Aaron Jones is also injured. There's a chance he is not expected to play this week, which means Jordan Mason could be the lead guy for us here in week number 3. Moving on to the Packers, Jaden Reed, broken collarbone. We'll talk about how that's going to affect that offense and some of those guys over there. Then you look at Tucker Kraft, who did injure his chest, but returned. A little bit of a slight scare. We saw him look good to start the game. And then there was a weird, he kind of fell to the ground and it was very strange, but he ended up being okay. And then obviously had a monster game. We'll talk about that as well. Austin Eckler, super, super unfortunate for Austin Eckler, who has been a staple of the fantasy community. He promotes and supports the fantasy, community where a lot of NFL players could care less about fantasy football. Austin Eckler is not one of those guys. Unfortunately, torn Achilles, and a guy at his age, unfortunate that it could be the end for him in his career. I'm sure he'll maybe try to give it a go, but next year. But I don't really. It's hard to imagine a guy like him at his age returning back to being productive for us. So really unfortunate to see, but that should help out Bill Krosky-Merritt, the rookie running back over there. Justin Fields in concussion protocol. Jets offense looked absolutely terrible. Devonta Smith hurt his back, but did return to that game. That's it for the first takeaways. Let's move on to our second takeaway, and it's Tucker Kraft. We talked about Tucker Kraft before in the beginning of the show with the injuries. He did return, and he's had a monster start to the season. If you watch Player Profiler, tons of analysts here have circled Tucker Kraft, including myself, Wyatt, Chev. There are a lot of guys here that were projecting Tucker Kraft to have a good season and be a guy that you can take, outside of those big tight ends that were being drafted this season. He was a strong value, and he's paying dividends for fantasy owners to start the season. 11 targets, 8 receptions, 140 yards for Tucker Kraft, 2 touchdowns. He's had a touchdown in back-to-back games so far. And when we talk about Tucker Kraft and look at the data a little bit deeper here, he leads tight ends that with a minimum of 5 targets in terms of points per opportunity on each target, right? He's averaging over 3 points per target so far to start the season. Explosive and efficient, which is what we've pegged Tucker Kraft. Last year, we saw him do a lot with a little, and we said, if this guy can just get a little bit more in terms of volume and opportunity, Tucker Kraft could be, potentially a top 5, top 6 guy, right? And we're seeing it so far. Again, early on into the season, I am going to drop the number 10 takeaway is going to be a very big mind blower, right? When we talk about, and I'm not even gonna tease in what it is actually, but make sure you stick around because it's very, very interesting information and something that people would be pretty surprised about. But no Jaden Reed with the broken collarbone. Matthew Golden could also take some time to really connect and hit his stride with Jordan Love, right? And they did miss on a big, big connection that looked like it could have been a 90+ yard touchdown. And those opportunities are going to be there for Golden on the big plays, but ultimately the rhythm of the offense, Tucker Kraft could be the number one option, going forward. Would not surprise me. Sixth in target share through the first 2 weeks of the season for Tucker Kraft. Could be that number one target. He leads the league right now in yards per route run at the tight end position, and he leads the NFL in passer rate when targeted, which includes all positions: wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. Tucker Kraft leads the NFL right now when targeted in terms of passer rating. So Tucker Kraft, the hype before the season is real. It seems so far, just 2 weeks again, but there are not a lot of staples outside of Josh Jacobs, maybe no staples at all in this offense that you can rely on right now for the Packers outside of Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft, wheels up for him. If you have him, you got a nice value so far. Let's hope that it continues, but it looks like a clear runway for him. Number 3, Trevion Henderson hype train. This is something that we have to talk about, guys. Trevion Henderson, look, it's unfortunate, right? It seems like Ramondre Stevenson is really that guy right now in the offense, right? And I talked about it, and I still love Trevion Henderson. Me and Matt, the Podfather, talked about it before the season. I think Trevion Henderson has the ability to be a top 12 back second half of the year, and I still think it's very possible. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to need to wait on that. I did warn that, if you didn't have an elite running back with Trevion Henderson, taking him at his cost at the 4th round would have been a little rich. And there were times he was going in the late 3rd round. And ultimately, if you don't have that anchor RB, I would be a little bit nervous if he's your RB2 and he's paired with, maybe a guy that you took, later on in the 2nd round, like an Amara Hampton. If you have those two guys, you might be in trouble. I have both of those guys going off of what I just said in an auction league. I ended up with Hampton and Henderson. Auction leagues are much different than Serpentine, and it just kind of how the cards fell for me. But Trevion Henderson, 11 routes versus Ramondre Stevenson, who had 16. His role actually did not increase. Antonio Gibson is the one that's role increased. His role actually decreased this week. We saw some holdings, unfortunately, for Henderson that I think kept him off the field, and he struggled a little bit, right, in pass protection, which is not really that's surprising for him. This is a guy who was the best pass protector in the NFL draft, in my opinion, for the running back position. I don't expect that to be the norm for him, but I also think that played a part into his, overall his usage and how much he was on the field. Henderson, again, saw the least amount of carries out of Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, and Trevion Henderson. Stevenson had 5 catches for 88 yards. And Ramondre Stevenson, what people need to remember is last season, Ramondre Stevenson was RB9 through 2 weeks of the season. So before we, get super upset and discouraged about this, Ramondre Stevenson finished as RB27 last year, and started again first 2 weeks of the season where we are now as RB9. So got to give Ramondre Stevenson some credit here. A lot of people, including myself, pegged him to lose that role, and it's only 2 weeks. But when the fumbles start to happen and the juice is not there for Stevenson, I do predict that Henderson is going to take over this backfield. Can't trust Henderson right now. After 2 weeks, he's a guy that's probably on your bench, right? Maybe a flex play in leagues, or maybe have injuries or bye weeks start to come up until we see it with him. I still love him for a monster second half of the year, but I don't I don't expect him to be this low production, of course, forever, right? You can't hold that talent off the field only for so long. And actually, Ramondre Stevenson had a 55-yard wheel route that he caught. And the coaching staff actually said it was meant to be for Trevion Henderson. So they have plans for Trevion Henderson. While it didn't show up just yet, and it hasn't showed up on the stat sheet, right? Keep in mind, week 1, he caught 5 passes. So he's going to be utilized in the pass game. Even though there was a decrease in the role, he still ran 11 routes to Rhamondre Stevenson 16. That could flip quickly. So let's keep that in mind. Now, if you are paying attention, we do have Monday Night Football tonight, right? Make sure you're getting your DFS lineups locked and loaded. And with that in mind, let's hear a word from the Podfather.
So let's put our hoodie on and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our Lineup Genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our Lineup Genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So go fight fire with a Player Profiler DFS Dominator.
All right, guys, we are back. And yes, go check out the DFS Dominator, right? If you are somebody like myself who is a degenerate, loves to gamble, wants more action, even if fantasy football is not enough for you, go check that out. Moving on to number 4, and it is Scats earning a role at this point in time. Cam Skattebo is looking like a guy who could flip this backfield quicker than we expected. Cam Skattebo right now, lead back role, looks like he may be inching closer to earning it, right? If we look at what happened last week, right? He led the RB room in snaps with 38. He ran 18 routes versus Tyrone Tracy's 19, right? So not even just the guy that you're going to use on the early downs, but he's running routes as a pass catcher. And many people told us this offseason, Tyrone Tracy is the better pass catcher. We've heard it before, converted wide receiver to running back. Cam Skattebo was an awesome pass catcher out of the backfield in college. And keep in mind, both of those guys were not good in pass protection. Cam Skattebo in college and Tyrone Tracy in the NFL and in college. But I think Skattebo has the tools to be better in that. So I think he'll also be out there on passing downs. And so we've seen it so far where they like him as a pass catcher. He ran those routes. We saw 3 targets, back-to-back weeks with 2 catches. He had 2 catches for 14 yards and 1 touchdown this week. He did get into the end zone. 11.9 PPR points, second highest rushing grade on the week per PFF. So number 2 for all running backs was Cam Skattebo on the week, right? So he looked good. I'm expecting him to take over or take a larger role, right? I expected that halfway through the season. I thought he was going to have the majority of the workload in this offense. I didn't expect it to happen this quickly. Now it's only 1 week, and I don't expect this to be what it is every single week going forward. But what I would say is he could earn the majority of that workload quicker than expected. I'm not saying it's going to be that way next week, but it could be flipped much, much quicker than we anticipated. So that's number 4 here. Number 5, Quinshon Judkins instant impact, right? Quinshon Judkins did not have a great day fantasy-wise. You didn't put him in your lineup. Hopefully you didn't put him in your lineup unless you were absolutely desperate. But Quinshon Judkins was the primary early down back, right? And this is a guy who was activated on Saturday, played a bigger role than expected, right? He logged 10 carries for 61 yards. He played 26% of the snaps. So Jerome Ford took the majority of the snaps in this offense. But he had more rushes than Bill Krosky-Merritt, than Trevion Henderson, than RJ Harvey. And this is a guy that pretty much had no offseason at all. I mean, if you count OTAs, but he had no training camp and he had limited practice this week that just passed, and he still logged more carries than all of those guys, right? So it looks like the Browns have no concerns about getting him eased into this role. They're going to use him, right? The rotation a little bit messy this year, this week, but for the first week back, that is a decent amount of usage for a guy that pretty much did not train all offseason with the team and practice really sparsely. I don't know how you put it. But he's a borderline fantasy starter already. Like, this is a guy that you can probably start to plug in your lineup, like at this point in time. 1 week sample size, but again, all that volume for a guy that's barely worked in with the offense makes me think that role is it's not gonna take a long time for that role to continue to increase and increase and increase and increase. Still possible suspension though, so we have to keep that in mind. That is one thing that is a little bit concerning that could come down the pipe. Now, I do want to also note that I will answer some questions at the end of the show, whether it's stuff for next week, waiver wires, questions for tonight. We have 2 Monday Night Football games, so keep that in mind. I will answer some questions at the end of this. We have 10 total takeaways. We are here at number 5. Let's move over to number 6, and it's Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze has 165 receiving yards, which is 9th in the NFL through 2 weeks of NFL football. Very, very encouraging for a guy that was being drafted as the number 2 wide receiver in his offense, right? DJ Moore was being drafted a few rounds ahead of Rome Odunze. And right now, per camp reports, for what we've seen so far the first 2 weeks, Rome Odunze looks like the guy to own in this Packers offense. DJ Moore, we know, has those, I guess, quote unquote, locker room character concerns, right? Ben Johnson has made some comments. There were some issues and concerns in training camp early on that had to get ironed out, right? So we're seeing it pay dividends for Rome Odunze year 2 with Caleb Williams. And Caleb has not been great, right? I think we can all agree with that. But the volume has been there for Rome, and he's been great so far for Rome Odunze. 13 receptions, ranked 13th in the NFL so far. He has 3 total touchdowns. 3 total touchdowns for Rome Odunze, number 1 in the NFL. I think he looks like that Bears wide receiver 1 right now. He's played 100% snap rate. 100% snap rate, 29.7% target share for Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore is down to below 20% on his target share. And it's concerning when you think about Loveland is not even involved in the offense right now. Luther Burden not involved in the offense right now. And DJ Moore is still not producing very high, and Rome Odunze is, right? So that's a good thing. And if those guys start to get involved, I would be a little bit concerned for DJ Moore. I'm not pressing the panic button on him completely. It's only 2 weeks, and that offense is going to take some time to get ironed out. So if you are a DJ Moore owner, I would be a little bit concerned, but I would not be panicking completely. But I would be concerned if you paid up on that price, because I ultimately thought and still believe that Rome Odunze is going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And at cost, you paid more for DJ Moore. But ultimately, DJ Moore is still going to be able to produce, I think, this season. Moving on to number 7. The Detroit Lions demise was premature, guys. I mean, there was talks about in the offseason, they lost these offensive linemen, they lost Ben Johnson. And overall, Jared Goff, what could he be without a mastermind like Ben Johnson, in the system, helping him out in his ear? Jared Goff, 334 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. And we know with Jared Goff, there are some outliers where when he plays outdoors on the road, he has performed well. But majority of the time, Jared Goff at home has been phenomenal for the Detroit Lions. And we saw it again today. This was a get right, get back game for the Detroit Lions. And almost every single fantasy asset in this offense had a good day outside of Sam Laporta, who left the game early. You had Jahmyr Gibbs, who had 94 rushing yards and a touchdown. He also caught a couple of passes. David Montgomery had 5.2 yards per carry and plunged one into the end zone. St. Brown, 3 total touchdowns for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hands up. I got to be honest, guys. I do not have any Amon-Ra St. Brown in any league this year. Any league. I like Nico Collins more. I like Drake London more. And I was probably wrong, right? St. Brown looks like he's going to continue to be that guy. And it's awesome to see for St. Brown, right? 3 total touchdowns. It doesn't feel like it's being talked about a ton since, the games have ended. But ultimately, St. Brown is just a guy that continues year over year to produce. And if you drafted him, there's a good chance you got a discount on him this year, because a lot of people like myself were not very high on him. And so his bags or his cost was starting to drop a little bit towards draft season. Jameson Williams, let's talk about him a little bit. 108 yards, awesome. The big plays are there for Jameson Williams, just 2 receptions. Did have a touchdown. The volume is still a concern for Jameson Williams. Isaac Tesla looks good. There are other assets in this offense, and right now, volume is going to be there for St. Brown and Gibbs, and everybody else is going to feast or famine, right? That's what it looks like in this offense. And unfortunate, if you have Jameson Williams, he had a really big day, but there are going to be highs and lows with him most likely. It could change. It's only through 2 weeks, but this is a consistent theme that we've seen for Jameson Williams throughout the years with the Lions in this offense. And I don't know if that's going to be changing. So we'll see how that plays out. One last thing, Packers defense plus new faces on the offensive line, plus the new OC, had everybody panicking, right, for this Lions team. Maybe the Packers defense were just that good. Jared Goff is not the best on the road. And, it's new faces, offensive line, new OC. I mean, the Packers defense made the Commanders offense look bad, right? So, I mean, I think that was a little premature. And I think if you bet on the Lions, you play DFS, if you have those fantasy assets, you're very, very happy, and you probably made some money this week. Moving on to number 8. Troy Franklin is a priority ad right now. I talked about it. If you follow me on Twitter at Supernova38 with 2 R's, I talked about Troy Franklin last week. I felt like he was a very nice stash that not a lot of people were talking about, and we're seeing it pay dividends. He had a good week 1, a solid week 1, and now in week 2, the breakout looks like it might be here for Troy Franklin. I know it's only one big game for him, but keep in mind, and I talked about it last week when I was targeting him as a guy to pick up, Troy Franklin, the drumbeat was very loud for him this offseason, right? They traded Devon Vele, who they expected to be penciled in as their number 2 wide receiver. They traded him. They got a very good return, but part of their comfortability for moving on from him was that Troy Franklin really took the next step forward, right? And so we're seeing it pay dividends for Troy Franklin. Very, very nice to see. 29% target per route run is 6th in the NFL for Troy Franklin. 2.61 yards per route run, 14th in the NFL. And he was number 19 in first down routes per routes run. He also led Denver in all snaps, routes, targets, receptions, pretty much all categories. And again, like I said, my favorite stash last week. You can still get him though. I mean, he's owned in less than 10% of leagues. So I would be adding him. He's not going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team going forward, guys. Like, I mean, Evan Ingram's eventually going to get going. I think they were cautious with him off of the injury. Sutton, right? Just Sutton, Kenny Moore, like Xavier Howard, like he was getting the best coverage. Lou Amarato had a very, very good game plan schemed up to take Sutton away in this game, and that's what they did. But Denver's offense had no issue finding other assets in this offense, and Bo Nix had a great bounce back week. I expect Troy Franklin to be a guy that could be flex worthy going forward. He's not going to be your wide receiver 2, but he could be a guy. He's going to be a guy, I think, that will be confidence flexing going forward. Now, number 9. And I do have to say this, guys. I was on the show last week. I've pounded the drum for Charbonnet, Zach Charbonnet, and this is Walker versus Sharp segment here at number 9. Zach Charbonnet was a guy that I loved, and I took my victory laps last week in week 1. After that, I came here, I talked to you guys about it. I said I'd be concerned about Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, 13 carries for 105 yards, 1 total touchdown. Zach Charbonnet had more carries, and he only had 10 yards. It was a terrible game for Zach Charbonnet. He looked awful, and Kenneth Walker looked absolutely phenomenal, right? The thing about Kenneth Walker is the talent has always been there. He is the better running back than Zach Charbonnet. It's really about the injury concerns, right? And the timeshare concerns, right? We're seeing a 41% snap share through 2 games for Walker and a 49% snap share through 2 games for Charbonnet, right? It's going to be a frustrating timeshare, I believe, for the rest of the season, unless Kenneth Walker is just too good to keep off the field and Zach Charbonnet is just absolutely stinking it up, right? Like he did in week 2. But I still stand by the fact that even with the way these splits are going, Kenneth Walker's price that you paid in that 4th round is still not worth it, in my opinion. I still have concerns with the splits and the injury concerns. I could be wrong. I am taking my humble pie here and telling you guys that, maybe I was a little too quick last week. But ultimately, I would still not be that comfortable if you are Kenneth Walker. If there's an owner that you can maybe go sell him high to, and go pick up a guy that's maybe had a down week, you might want to consider doing that, in my opinion. But if you have him and you love him and you're convicted with him, go ahead, keep him. But that's just my thoughts on that backfield. Number 10, and I talked about this and I wanted to kind of tease this a little bit, but let's do a last season look back, guys, because in 2024, there was a ton of teams that looked phenomenal to start the year. The Saints in 2024 were like the best offense in the NFL the first 2 weeks. Now it's Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts that are the best offense through 2 weeks of the season. So I'm not saying the Colts are going to fall off either. I actually think the Colts have very much can sustain, or not sustain this, but can sustain strong offensive output. But let's do a look back on players from last year for the first 2 weeks of the season, right? And where they ended up finishing. You had Derek Carr, quarterback 2, finished as quarterback 26. Now he did have the injuries, keep that in mind, but still quarterback 2, right? Bo Nix, quarterback 23, finished as the quarterback 9 after 2 weeks to the full end of the season. Running back, we talked about Ramondre Stevenson. RB9 through the first 2 weeks of the season, finished the season as RB27. Josh Jacobs, RB24 through the first 2 weeks of the season. Everybody was concerned about Josh Jacobs, where you drafted him. Oh, Matt LaFleur, his system, loves 2 running backs. Josh Jacobs finished as RB6 and pretty much had like almost the entire workload in that Packers offense, right? And finished as RB6. Chuba Hubbard, RB41 for the first 2 weeks of the season. And that was with Jonathan Brooks not there, right? He finishes RB12, right? RB12. You had Miles Sanders in front of him, right? And he just was a better player. Some of these guys, these younger running backs, right? Like we're seeing with the rookies, the veterans are going to be there. They're going to play. It's going to take some time for some of these rookies, but some of these rookies are clearly more talented. And there's a good chance with RJ Harvey, with Trevion Henderson, with obviously Quinshon Judkins, who we talked about, who I think his path is much more clear. A lot of these running backs that are rookies, they're probably the best guys in their backfield. They're going to eventually take on that lead back role, in my opinion. It's just a matter of it's going to take some time, right? Najee Harris tonight with Amarion Hampton could very well see close to a 50-50 split. It's possible. That's coming from a guy who has a decent amount of Amarion Hampton. But Bucky Irving, RB44, finishes RB15. Another rookie who had Rachaad White, who scored a ton of touchdowns last year, and the year before was the guy. A lot of people did not believe in Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving ended up having a fire finish to the season. Wide receiver, Deebo Samuel was wide receiver 11 to start the year after 2 weeks. He finishes wide receiver 41. Heck, people were pretty much saying that he's going to be on the couch eating donuts because he was out of shape and looked fat, right? So, I mean, again, let's pump the brakes. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 41, another young guy, finished as the wide receiver 12, right? Drake London, another young guy, wide receiver 37, finished as wide receiver 10. We'll wrap it up with the tight ends here. Mike Gesicki, tight end number 6 through 2 weeks, finished as the tight end 15. Mark Andrews, tight end 17, finished as tight end 6. Now, those two guys are almost completely flipped. Mark Andrews because we're talking about it here, a little bit of concern there, right? He did have a couple of targets in the end zone, did not come down with them. I think they're going to get him involved. He's not going to be a volume guy. Like, that's just what it is. Mark Andrews took a little bit of time last year to get involved. I think it's going to happen for him. Just have to be patient, right? I get the concerns there, but we'll let it play out. Now, that is it for the top 10 takeaways. I do want to go ahead and take a look at the chat, see if there are any questions that I can answer for you guys. Let's go ahead and take a look. Jamie's in here, said, "Sup, dude, what's going on?" Miriam Kim said, "Drop Dak for Goff. I have May as my other quarterback. I would hold on to Dak Prescott." I know Jared Goff had a great week this past week, but I prefer Dak. I think the upside and the ceiling is higher. You have Drake May, so either guy here is a good option because they're going to be stable. And Drake May is going to probably, I think Drake May is going to be the guy that you're going to want to start more weeks than not. I had May over both of these guys, and he's had a really strong start to the year. Said, "I just need 20 points from Genty to beat a team with Amon-Ra, James Cook, and Puka. Good luck there." Yeah, I mean, I think Genty could have a really strong week. I know Chargers defense. I like the Chargers defense, but that run defense had, EPA wise was not great in week one. And I think they're going to try to get Genty going. Trone Carter said this doesn't hit the same when Matt does it. I totally get that, Trone. Appreciate you being here though. And I'll do my best, man. Albert in the house, fantasy farmer. Tucker Kraft is the only guy I trust to catch the ball in Green Bay. I hear you. Albert said, "I have Henderson and I'm on Hampton as well." I hear you. Uncle Ted is in the house. Let's see. We got a question here. Igbuka or Keenan Allen to have more fantasy points tonight? I think the ceiling is higher for Igbuka, but I think the floor is higher for Keenan Allen. I'm going to go with Igbuka, but I think the ceiling is higher there. Keenan Allen's got a better floor, though. Uncle Ted said, "Against a crap Cowboys defense, Igbuka has to face Stingley. Good luck." Mike Evans is going to draw the best coverage tonight, I think, guys. That's my expectations. Mike Evans is going to draw the best coverage. Let's see. Judkins season. Michael Lopez said, "I wish I was joking. 2 quarterback league. Browning, Taylor, or Wentz." Oh man. I'm gonna say Browning because Browning has probably the longest leash here. They could bring somebody else in. Very possible. Wentz, they have a good rookie there for the Vikings. I think it's Barman or Bauman. I can't remember the name. It starts with a B. He looked pretty good in the preseason. They ended up getting rid of Sam Howell because they felt so comfortable with how this kid looked. So I could absolutely see a world where Wentz doesn't play the entire time JJ McCarthy's out. Tyrod Taylor is the guy I don't want the most here. He could have I don't even think he was going to have the best week. I mean, that Bengals game against the Vikings could be solid for Browning. I don't know. He could actually be put in a blender from that pass rush. But ultimately, longevity wise, I'd rather Browning in a 2 quarterback league. I think you'll get more starts. Tyrod's going to be playing because of the concussion. Also, Michael Lopez said, "Hit that like button." Yes, please do so, guys. Nino said, "Got in trade talks earlier. Thoughts on sending Tyreek plus ETN for Chase Brown and George Kittle? I like the idea of trading Tyreek Hill ASAP, but I have McBride." So Tyreek and ETN for Chase Brown and Kittle. You have McBride. So I guess my question is, can you get somebody that's not George Kittle, right? Like, can you get a better player? I mean, ultimately, I'm taking this deal, but I would see if there's a better, like another position player over Kittle, unless you're going to play both. And you're not in a bad spot playing 2 tight ends if it's George Kittle and McBride, but Kittle's going to be out for a few weeks, which maybe is why they're willing to part ways with him. But if they can't move and don't want to give you a better, like a skilled player outside of tight end, that's good. I would still take that deal. So that's what I would do there. I still like Chase Brown rest of the season over ETN. Nino said he countered and with Jacoby instead. Should, if not, yeah, I would actually rather Kittle than Jacoby in this sense. So Appreciate that. Nino said, Pete's the GOAT. Don't get it twisted. Appreciate that, my man. Couple more questions here. Jay Hang 20 said, hey, trade away BTJ for Rice and Odunze. I have Drake London, Igbuka, and Travis Hunter. So in this situation, right, Rice is not coming back, right? He's got the bye week plus the suspension. We got 4 more weeks with the suspension plus a bye week. So really 5 weeks until he plays, but he's going to be a monster when he plays. We know that. BTJ has some concerns. I mean, honestly, if you're 2-0 here and your record is good, I would do this deal. I have concerns about BTJ. I don't think he's going to be this bad all year. I'm not saying that. I think he's the best player in this deal, possibly. But Rashee Rice and Odunze, it's hard not to, right? I would take that deal if you're 2-0 and you feel comfortable going for the rest of the season. Let's see if we have anything else. Jamie, appreciate that. Said, no need for me to ask any questions because I follow all your shows and you guys are amazing at giving out info and managing teams at the highest level. Appreciate that, my friend. And he also notes that Browning was quarterback 7 overall in points per game in 2023 from weeks 12 to 18. Appreciate that, Jamie. You are correct. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I am not the Podfather. I'm going to do my best, though, to make sure that these shows are informational, they're fun, they're exciting. I can't bring the energy like Matt does, but I'm going to do my best. I'm excited for week 3. I'm excited to see what unfolds tonight. Monday Night Football, we have the doubleheader. To me, I don't really like that there is a doubleheader, but I got you guys out of here within 40 minutes with a ton of information. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the video once this closes out. We'll be happy to answer them for you as well. Good luck with your starts and your games that are being played tonight. I'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.